Hi guys, welcome to our coffee times. Today we're here to discuss one of the newest horror movie releases for 2024, the first Omen.
It's coffee time.
When this movie was announced, I have to admit that I was not quite so excited about it because I always question these decisions when they try to bring a prequel to an older franchise, especially, or when they add a sequel to a well-established franchise. It's always the question of, is this movie really truly necessary? And is it going to add something to the story, or is it just a cash grab? So to be fair, I went to the movie without high expectations, and I'm here today to let you know what I thought about the movie. As always, is spoiler free. The First Omen is a 2024 horror movie directed by Akasha Stevenson, and this is her first feature debut. She has done, I think, TV shows and stuff before, but this is the first like full-length feature film that she has done, so it's in a way her debut into the movie world. It is a prequel to The Omen from 1976, which was the first movie in the franchise, and it serves then as the sixth installment in said franchise. The director has proven to be very talented, and if you watch this movie, you're going to think that this is almost a non-exploitation film, but also it has a level of psychological terror. It is almost like a paranoid thriller with a lot of vibes from movies like Rosemary's Baby. When a young American woman is sent to Rome to begin a life of service to the church, she encounters a darkness that causes her to question her own faith and will end up uncovering a terrifying conspiracy. This is basically an origin story. It is Damien's origin story. He is the main character in The Omen from 1976. A couple of Americans in London decide to adopt this child who happens to be Damien, and they don't know that this child is actually the seed of evil. So that is basically what The Omen is about. I believe everybody knows the plot of that film, and this is supposed to be Damien's origin story. It's almost like, you know, a superhero, and it deserves an origin story. Neil Tiger Free plays Margaret, who is an American nun that goes all the way to Rome to take her vows and to, you know, get ready for a life of servitude to the church. And she is also going to be working at a orphanage that is being run by nuns, and it is an orphanage of only girls. Her performance is one of the best performances that I have seen lately on a horror film. The way that she is able to portray so many different emotions, like her character goes basically through every possible human emotion, and she sells every little bit of it, and her character is so believable. Every time something shifts and she has to adapt to a new kind of way of expressing herself as her character changes throughout the film, she manages to capture that feeling so well. Her intensity in this movie is just mesmerizing. Ralph Ineson plays here Father Brennan, who was one of my favorite characters in this film, because the moment that you see him, you feel like it's a character that just stepped out of the 1976 film. The beginning of the movie, I was like, is this The Exorcist? We're going back to the 70s, and the atmosphere and everything was just so well achieved. And Father Brennan is one of the characters that we meet from the very beginning, and I really enjoyed him as a character. But I feel like everybody in the crew did such a good job. Like, the acting in this movie was amazing. There were some, you know, older, more experienced actors, but there were also some new actors that I think did a wonderful job. There is a Spanish girl that plays Luz, who is the roommate of our main character. She also did a wonderful job. Origin stories or prequels to well-established horror movies or horror franchises are sometimes just not needed, and they feel empty. They feel like it's just a crash grab because people are gonna want to watch it because they enjoyed the original or they enjoyed the franchise. However, by the time you walk out of the cinema after you finish this film, you will understand how important this movie is and how chilling the origin story of Damien is. And I do feel like this movie has a place and a purpose in the franchise. The first Omen is truly an Omen movie with all of its symbolism. It has 70s vibes, an earthy color palette, and trust me, you will be thinking about this movie long after you have seen it. The soundtrack was fantastic. We get new tunes combined with some of the older music, some of the older score that we know from the original Omen film. The sound in general of this movie was really good because I feel like the sound really supported achieving and maintaining the tension of the movie, and it helped a lot with the horror and the unsettling feeling that you had watching this film. You were always, hearing things and wondering what that sound was. Like, the score in general was fantastic. You are like hyper aware of every little footstep, every little like cry, everything that you hear, and it kind of helps to build up that dread for the main characters. But it also has stunning production design and costumes. Like, this movie looks really, really good. The script was also on point. I loved the script so much of this film. I think that everything that is being said in this movie had a purpose. There are some words that are being used by different characters, like the word brave, and by the end of the film you understand why this word was used. And it goes like that for a lot of things that are being said in the movie. Some of them are being repeated and it has a purpose. And I felt like that was so smart. And when you finish a movie like that, you think, oh, I need to rewatch it now because I'm pretty sure that I missed a lot of hints and a lot of other things that they have been leaving there for us. When the movie started, I was already sold. Like, the first couple of seconds, I was sold because the look of the movie was flawless. It looked honestly like I was watching a 70s horror film. And it gave me, for some reason, the Exorcist vibes. That's why I'm wearing the t-shirt today, because honestly, it gave me Exorcist vibes. And it gave me, original Omen vibes. And just the way that it looked, the colors, the sets, the wardrobe, it was just fantastic. And this movie is not about an exorcism. Let me put that clear out there. It is not about an exorcism, but it felt like it could be an exorcism movie. Like, this is how I would like exorcism movies to look like, especially if they're set back in time. This movie understands the supernatural horror genre, and it plays with our perception and orchestrates an escalating sense of paranoia with ease. There are a couple of jump scares, and even though those were really well executed, those are not the things that will give you nightmares. The movie had a slow pacing at the beginning, but honestly, the story was so good, the script was so good that I was so invested. I didn't care that it had a slow build-up. And then it starts to get weirder and weirder, like wild. And the last 20 minutes are like the shit. The last 20 minutes of this movie were chef's kiss. This movie had wonderful practical effects. It had wonderful body gore, and it is one of those things where you're watching a scene and you almost want to close your eyes because you know it's going to be really disturbing and you're questioning if you want to see that, because those images are going to be imprinted in your brain. And let me tell you, I watched it like 2 days ago, Saturday night, and I'm still plagued by nightmares. It's one of those horror movies when you know you're going to see something and you know it's going to make you really, really uncomfortable. And the director is easing you into that scene. You know it's coming and you almost don't want to get there. Especially in the last 20 minutes of the film, I felt like, when you're in a car and you know you're about to crash and you know there's nothing you can do to stop the car, you just, you know you're gonna crash and you have just accepted your destiny. There's nothing you can do to stop it. That's how I felt with this film. I felt like we were going in a roller coaster and I could just not get off, and I just had to accept what was coming for me. And honestly, that was one of the best feelings. When I was watching the first Omen, I started to think about Immaculate, which is another 2024 horror movie starring Sydney Sweeney that I just watched the other day. I almost watched them back to back, and the themes are very, very similar. But even though they have similar themes, I felt like the first Omen was a lot more serious and had a lot more of edge. Both movies kind of portray the hypocrisy of religion, as well as not having autonomy of your own body when you're a female. And I think both movies did a wonderful job at portraying that and at being unsettling. Both movies were good movie releases for 2024, especially considering what we got in January and February, which was not great. So we're finally getting back on track with good horror movies this year. And if I had to choose from Immaculate or The First Omen, I would prefer The First Omen, just because the way that it looks and the script and everything was just a bit better, in my opinion. But I would still recommend you to watch both movies because they were both great. For me, there are two times when a movie experience in the theater leaves a mark. One is when I go to the movies with a really high expectation and then I get extremely disappointed by a movie and then I get sad and frustrated. The other one is when I go with really low expectations or thinking it's just going to be an okay movie and then I'm just being blown away, which is what happened with The First Omen. I went into it thinking, okay, it's a prequel, you know, it's probably just gonna be all right. I don't have any high hopes for it. And then I was immediately blown away by it. I gave this movie a 4.5 out of 5 because for me it was an almost perfect film, and it is crazy that a prequel to a movie from the 70s managed to be as good almost as the original. I would see this one's for me almost at the same level when it comes to quality, and I am really surprised, but at the same time I'm really excited now to see also what the director has to offer next, because if this is her debut, even though she has experience with TV shows, but it's a complete different animal to make a movie, especially to make a movie about a franchise and make it justice. And this movie was just fantastic. I strongly recommend you guys to go and check it out at the cinema. I strongly do recommend to watch it on the big screen and get ready to be uncomfortable and disgusted, especially in the last 20 minutes of the film. I hope that you guys enjoyed this spoiler-free review. Let me know down below if you are a fan in general of the Omen franchise and if you have already seen this new entry. Thank you guys as always so much for your support, and I hope to see you all as always in our next coffee time. Bye!